So good day, everyone, and welcome to this OpenAIRE webinar. So to start with, it's my pleasure to announce our expert speaker today. This is Elli Papadopoulou. Elli is a representative at the OpenAIRE National Open Access Desk for Greece at ATHENA Research and Innovation Center. And myself, Stella Stoycheva, I am a Stakeholder Engagement and Dissemination Manager at GRACIOUS, and I'll be moderating this discussion. So before we start, I wish to thank all of you for joining the call today and to brief you about this webinar. So first of all, the idea about this webinar came from the need to establish a procedure which researchers from the GRACIOUS project need to follow in order to comply with the Horizon 2020 policy about open science. And what is this policy? In short, under Horizon 2020, all researchers are obliged to make publicly available and free not only their scientific publications, but also their research data or datasets using open repositories like OpenAIRE in order to contribute to the overall open science idea. And in this context, all Horizon 2020 projects need to create a data management plan with input from all partners. Therefore, one of the purposes to create this training in GRACIOUS is to basically introduce to partners the OpenAIRE platform and to speak about their reporting obligations. From GRACIOUS perspective, after this webinar, we will enhance our reporting procedure as outlined in our current data management plan, and we will share it with all the partners. As you know, of course, this training is not only limited to GRACIOUS partners, but in fact is open to any other Horizon 2020 projects and anyone who is generally interested in open science. And therefore, we consider that having this joint training can help us and also other projects in training their partners and potentially helping them enhance their data management plans. So shortly, before we start, here is some housekeeping information. This is a live webinar, you're all muted, and you can ask questions via the chat field. Also, after the webinar, we will publish the recording on the GRACIOUS website, and you will also receive it via email. Last, if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact me if you're part of the GRACIOUS consortium or Elli for any further inquiries. And now I leave the floor to Elli.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Stella. Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm Elli Papadopoulou. I work for ATHENA Research Center. I'm a librarian by training and actually involved in OpenAIRE as the OpenAIRE National Open Access Desk for Greece. Today, we'll be discussing about open science to know the elements comprising open science and how these are translated to EU requirements. We'll follow these requirements to see how compliance can be achieved, and we'll see how a research workflow can be more open, how to publish articles and data in open access, and what to consider for your data management planning and things to have in mind prior before submitting it. Finally, we'll see the OpenAIRE services that can support this and can enable compliance through its infrastructure. So what is open science? Open science is a collection of norms and principles. It's an umbrella term and it involves movements and initiatives of open access, open data, open reproducible research. And you can see here in this taxonomy provided by Foster all these assets and how open access is involved and goes to the gold route that you can take, or the green route, and we'll see further in this webinar how you can publish through both of these routes. We have open data and open data journals, standards, and government data that are under this asset. reproducible research, which can be achieved by opening up the workflows and the lab and notebooks by using open source software. And also there are evaluation mechanisms that support open science and all the above actions, which is done through open peer review and metrics that measures the research uptake and the research impact. There are policies that have been set in place in order to support open science, and these are reflected in funders, governments and institutions' policies. And of course, there are tools that have been developed in order to support implementation of open science policies. And these are open repositories, open services, and open workflow tools. But why choosing open science? What are the benefits of following open practices and publishing in open access? So for research, having sorry, I can hear myself, having openly available results means that you reach wider audience and that your research is spread towards many people and more than before. You can have the opportunity to reuse the research outputs and validate your own and others' research. You can prevent information and data loss since you have to deposit or publish a copy of your research in a trustworthy environment than just having your research in a hard drive. We know, we've seen several times that this can be a bad practice. So for economy, having more openly research, it stimulates innovation with the production of with generation of new products, which strengthens regional and national markets, and has also the benefit of opening new jobs in this data-driven research. And the EU, the European Commission actually said that to support data-intensive research and this new approach of open science, there has to be 500,000 data stewards to run activities. So you as a researcher have the opportunity to promote integrity of your work. You can increase the use of citations and get more credits by more people, as more people are using your work. And you have the benefit of being rewarded by the EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud, that I will explain a few things more later. For society, in this transparent environment of research conduct, you build trust between funders and all other stakeholders. You have the opportunity to collaborate on national and EU levels. Open science is about collaboration. And there's also the opportunity of citizens to participate in some activities, and meaning that the citizen science is also encouraged. What is the European Open Science Cloud, or the European Cloud Initiative, as it's in the EU documents? It's part of the digital single market and the European research area strategies, which have a broader scope of strengthening the research and development sector in the EU to achieve the benefits that I've just shared with you. The European Open Science Cloud, which is actually launching this Friday, and I'm in Vienna right now to participate in this launch, will be an ethical, open, secure, and cost-effective environment to support open science practices and research communication in the EU. So it will have in place solutions, technical and ethical and legal solutions for you that improves data and information sharing, also GDPR compliance, so that integrity is ensured. The mandate of the European Commission is reflected in Article 29.2 of Horizon 2020 Grant Agreement, and as you all know, that means that you have to publish in open access, deposit publications, articles, and data in a repository, and submit a data management plan. In doing that, there are some embargoes reflecting policies from publishers, which you have to take into consideration. I've checked some journal policies, and it says that for material science, the embargo period is around 24 months. Some have 2 only, I think I found, for 12 months, mainly 24 months. The motto to achieve this is, the European motto is having research being as open as possible, as close as necessary, meaning that we don't want everything, and we realize that not everything can be openly shared. There are data sets that can be shared because they include sensitive data, but there are some research data sets that can, of course, be manipulated, anonymized, and shared, but others that cannot. So as open as possible, as close as necessary, you decide if the dataset can be shared openly and how openly it can be shared. This data should follow the FAIR principles in order to be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable by others, and have a well-documented process of data handling and reuse so that others can be able to generate it and reuse it. Something that you have to have in mind is that the next funding framework, the Horizon Europe one, will have the open science as the modus operandi, meaning that all of the issues that we will be discussing in this webinar will be by default and included. Open access publications, data, and data management plan. So this is the research life cycle, starting with hypothesis, going to data collection to support this hypothesis and test it, processing of this data, storing, preserving, publishing, and reusing data. The yellow assets on top highlight the open practices, the open aspects of each of the stages of the research life cycle. So for hypothesis, for example, you have to consider, in order to be more open, you have to consider financial requirements. For data collection, clarify usage rights, ensure that you give credit through citations. For processing, during processing of data, you have to make sure that you use open source software and open interfaces. Storing data and results have to use service infrastructure to support proper handling of this data. To attach a persistent identifier to your results and attach descriptive metadata. Also publish this metadata with an open license, and preserving in a safeguard environment, which is the repositories, and produce standard metadata for that. In the stage of publication and distribution, you have to publish metadata with an open license, use open evaluation, ensure links between publications data and methods, and make use of institutional repositories. And in order to reuse, you have to have clear citations and ensure the accumulation of credits. By the way, I forgot to mention that my colleague Pedro Princip is with us, and he will be assisting me in by replying some questions in the chat. How to publish in open access? There are 2 routes, the gold route and the green route. The gold route means that you have to pay sometimes some fees to the publisher the well-known article processing charges. You can check if your journal, if the journal that you want to publish has an APC. In the directory of open access journals, there's a list of open access journals, and these requirements are included. So if you see that there are no APCs or some APCs, you can take a look at the DOAJ, and of course in some subscription-based journals. For the green route, the self-archiving means that it's deposited your research is deposited in a repository, literature, or data one. So long-term preservation to be ensured. You can find literature repositories for deposit of your article in the Open Directory of Open Access Journals, the OpenDOAR. You can find data repositories which meet your needs in the re3 data, so that you deposit your data and data sets. And you can find the OpenAIRE compliant repositories under the Explore service of OpenAIRE, so that you are sure that you comply with Article 29.2 of the European Commission. And you can deposit all research outputs in Zenodo, which is a generic repository, assisted by and funded by OpenAIRE, and also ensures compliance with the EU requirements. Please note that you have to deposit your research, even if you choose to publish your research in following the gold route. You have to deposit in a repository. So, what to consider when depositing in a repository? What to deposit? The final peer review manuscript accepted for publication, including all modifications from the peer review process, or a machine readable copy of the published version, which is usually a PDF document. For APCs, when choosing the gold route, you can check the OpenAPC project, and when Stella will share the slides with you, you will be able to click on all these links that I've added to my slides, and you will be redirected to the websites. You can have a look. You have to check the publisher's open access policy for conflicts and for embargoes in depositing. And if you find difficulties in choosing, if there are general policies with conflicts, you can contact the publisher and let them know what you're doing and how do you plan to open your data and your research. So there are times that they can accommodate your needs. In order for your research to be reusable and to give others the opportunity to understand how to use them, to use your outputs, you have to assign open licenses. And Creative Commons has a variety of licenses and different combinations of rights, access rights and use rights. So you can consult this. And there's also the license selector tool, which assists in choosing a license for your purposes, for your specific purposes. Always you have to acknowledge funders when publishing in open access. And in addition to that, for the research data, you have to know the type of data that you want to deposit and to share with others. That means that this data are those that support your research and validate your results. It can be a software also that you might have developed in order to support your outcome. This is also included in the data to be published and deposited. The format of the data should be one for your analysis, but then converted to a standard format. More sustainable ones are RTF, XML, TIFF, WAV. Also proprietary ones, which are widely used, like the CatDoc, JPEG, and MP3. Metadata, you should use a metadata standard. For material science, there is the crystallographic information framework, the CSMD CCLRC, which is a study-oriented model, and the Nexus, which is international standard for the storage and exchange of Newton, X-ray, and muon experimental data. But there are others, of course, that you might be aware of. The most important thing that you have to remember is that it should be a standard, metadata standard, not just a metadata schema that someone is following or has developed. And also you have to assign to your data and articles persistent identifiers. Usually the repositories have this service in place. And this is because persistent identifier is a long-lasting reference to a document, file, or other object, and ensures that the place of this publication or data is ensured, is in place. By doing all of the above, you achieve fair compliance. That means that your information and data is findable by both human and machines, as you will have assigned persistent identifiers. You will have metadata standards to describe your data sets and your articles, and you will have included this in a searchable resource in a repository. They will be accessible through repositories and access conditions that you would have set, and retrievable by their ID using standard protocol. Metadata remain accessible even if data don't. They will be interoperable with other systems and technologies that will have standard vocabularies and qualified references, and OpenAIRE can assist in interoperability with national and EU repositories. And the information and data that you will have created will be reusable by others, since they will have there will be proper documentation and licensing of how to use this data. So how OpenAIRE helps and what it has to offer to this European research ecosystem, the open research ecosystem that is currently undergoing. There are some services in place, and there's a human network to support this. What is OpenAIRE? First of all, OpenAIRE is the pan-European infrastructure for open knowledge in the EU, and it helps stakeholders like funders, researchers, research communities, infrastructures and repositories, and even SMEs, small and medium enterprises, to comply with EU requirements. And in doing so, it has developed a set of services and tools like the repository network, where information is linked and is contextualized, so that funders and researchers get a better understanding of the research entity. And also this increases visibility. So if a repository is in the OpenAIRE network, it immediately means that you comply, the repository complies, and the researcher depositing this repository complies to this to the 29.2 article of the EU requirement, and that increases also the visibility of research outputs, since it's immediately indexed in OpenAIRE and available in the EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud. Dashboards, there are some dashboards for repository managers, funders, and research communities to manage and monitor processes when doing research. There are some tools for open science as well for researchers, like an anonymization tool, and I will go through that in a bit. And also a big backbone of the OpenAIRE is the human network with the national open access desks and the support, also technical support that it gives to all stakeholders, provides to all stakeholders. By doing all of the above, OpenAIRE ensures that it completes its mission, which is to open, share, and reuse research outcomes. As I told you, these are the services that apply to some key stakeholders, researchers and research communities, content providers and managers, funders and research administrators, and third-party service providers. If yourself have a dual role, and you're not only a researcher, but you can identify yourself in one of these categories, you can also browse the OpenAIRE website and also contact us to see how we can accommodate your needs and have a look how OpenAIRE can benefit you in this domain as well. The services for researchers. I've said a long time ago that there is Zenodo. It's a generic repository, a catch-all repository for EU-funded research. It's connected to OpenAIRE, meaning that compliance with EU requirements is ensured. For a long tail of science, it's free to use. That means that you can publish, you can deposit your article for free and your datasets for free, but there's a limit up to 50 GB per upload. If it's more, then you might have to pay a small fee. The data are stored in the CERN data center since it's co-developed with CERN. The service is co-developed with CERN, and that means that their long preservation is ensured. It has persistent identifiers, and it gives persistent identifiers to all research outputs that they are in this repository for every upload, and it also offers a DOI versioning so that any update that you might want to do in your research, in your upload, in your research, then this is kept and has another DOI. It also includes article level metrics so that you know the uptake of your research. And it's a generic one, meaning that it's open to all research outputs from all disciplines. So you can also upload, apart from articles, data, software, presentations, or other outputs. Another OpenAIRE service is Amnesia. With Amnesia, you remove those data and those values in the data that can be attributed to a person. For example, in one sensitive data has to do with some studies that involve persons and experiments involving persons. And that means it does that in data sets, and even if data linking occurs, it still makes sure that attribution can be, information can be attributed to a person. For data management, there will be launching soon the data management plan tool. that will contain the European Commission Horizon 2020 template. It will have massive actionable data management plans, so DOIs. It will assign DOIs as well. There will be versioning of those data management plans, DMPs, and an opportunity to collaborate with others by invite. But more information will come soon. The Human Network, the National Open Access Desks. This is the human network of OpenAIRE. OpenAIRE has one representative per country, per EU country. Currently, we are 34, and we are growing. And our mission and our responsibility is to help promote open science, open access, fair research data, and OpenAIRE services, and support all stakeholders, from researchers to project coordinators to national funders and administrators. Another mission is and that we have is to align policies, infrastructures, and repositories nationally with the EU requirements, with the European requirements. And in doing so, we collaborate and we try to build a strong network, a strong collaborative network in our countries. We organize national workshops for that, and trainings and other meetings. So if you are based in a country and you have to, you can also check the list of the NOADs and contact that country's NOAD for more information. But how to comply through OpenAIRE? So reporting and linking of your research outputs through OpenAIRE can be done immediately through Zenodo, which is an OpenAIRE service, an OpenAIRE Insert service. So if you publish and deposit your research in Zenodo, then you immediately comply to the EU requirements. You can check the OpenAIRE Explorer and find an OpenAIRE compliant repository. And the compliance takes a few days for that, so that we process the query, and then you can manually check and connect any research output that you have to your research through the OpenAIRE Connect service, which is very easy to use. And if you go to the website, you can see, you can have more information about how to use it. Some useful links to support my presentation is the OpenAIRE help desk, which you can at any time send us a ticket and contact us via this website. You can contact a NOAD, of course, if it's easier for you to do that, to contact somewhere that, for example, speaks your own language, your native language, then do so. Check if there is one and do so. If your country doesn't have an OpenAIRE representation, then you can always contact me and the help desk. There are OpenAIRE fact sheets showing also the workflow and open workflow and how to publish your data and publications in open access. There is the OpenAIRE Research Community Dashboard, which you can have a look to see its properties and its capabilities, and how it has and what it has to offer to your research and value that it has to offer to your research. And there's a long list of OpenAIRE webinars throughout all those years that OpenAIRE operates since 2008, but the webinar started later. So yes, at least five years of webinars. You can browse the catalog and you can have a look. And don't miss out, because if you sign up to OpenAIRE, you can also subscribe to the newsletter and get informed about news and updates that are happening, also with regards to the European Open Science Cloud and to the Horizon Europe, the new framework, and their new services as well. I think I haven't checked the chat, but do you have any questions so far?
Hi again, this is Stella. I have seen the chat, and currently we don't have any questions. Does anyone from the audience have any need for clarifications? If you wish to ask a question, please use the chat field. And in the meantime, I have a question, and probably this can give a little bit more time to the audience to ask a further question. So Elli, I want to ask you basically what kind of research data researchers can share, because publications is quite clear. What is the research data that they're supposed to share? And also, are there other documents that they want to share, like you mentioned, presentations and other dissemination materials? And final question would be, are researchers able to record their also dissemination activities in terms of in terms of the places that they visited, the conferences they attended, and all kind of dissemination and networking activities that they had?
Thanks, Stella. I will start from the last. So recording dissemination activities. Not really. The purpose of the data management plan is to reuse, to make others aware of how they can reuse your research. So if you have reuse as a first step before starting to collect information, and even in the hypothesis level, if you have the perspective of reuse in mind, you will immediately know what to do in terms of making people understanding the steps that you have taken in order to conclude, to make this, to derive this these outcomes and the results. So for the type of data, any research data that you feel that should be should add value and support your research in order for you to validate your results. If you think that this data gives value and supports your hypothesis, your methodology, and your result, then you should include it. Can be software, can be some surveys, so it can be tables, spreadsheets, anything that have been accumulated, generated, or yes, collected during the research process, but that it validates the results. If you happen to collect something which you didn't use, or it doesn't add anything again, then you shouldn't include it.
Okay, thank you so much for your nice presentation and for replying to those questions. I see that there are no further questions in the chat box, so I guess there have been a lot of information already, and we will basically close the webinar now. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sending the recording to all of you. also the presentation slides from Elli, and also this webinar will be published in the GRACIOUS website, so you can access this information anytime also later. And I wish to thank Elli a lot for this presentation today. And if there are any other questions after the webinar, please feel free to contact us. Thank you very much, Elli. And thanks to all the attendees. Bye, everyone.